You're listening to the Becoming Zesty podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex, and we're so happy that you're here.
We are passionate about accelerated transformation, yours, ours, and the collective.
Personal and professional for coaches, practitioners, and leaders of all kinds.
Between the two of us, we seem to have done things the painful way. So let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We are not afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul.
Combining over 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to create the life of your dreams, supporting yourself through all four bodies, physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, every step of the way.
We are transformation accelerators, wholeness cultivators, empowerment experts, speakers, authors, mentors, and change makers for a more loving world. By combining Dr. Alex's MD experiences
with Megan's mindset magic, we've helped hundreds of thousands of people transform their lives, and we can help you too. If you're ready to accelerate your transformation and have so much fun doing it, then stick around. We've got you covered. Quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into today's episode.
Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Becoming Zesty podcast. You have both of us here together today. The band's back together, Alex.
Yay! I love it. I like that. The band's back together.
And in this band, there are no instruments, just
vocals,
just our voice.
La 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 la. Just kidding.
Oh, that was a good segue. I love that. So, speaking of voice, I would love to ask everyone to kind of start to pay attention, and I want you to see if you're going to hear a difference in our voice in the sound over the next 12 weeks, because Dr. Alex and I are working with a voice coach, not really a classic, what you'd think of a voice coach. Is called the psychology of the voice. So it's the messages from your subconscious, super cool, that are coming through in your voice. So as we work with her, we're shifting the message, we're shifting the beliefs that are underneath the voice, because sometimes you can do all the work we do and you can have cleared something, like cleared a belief from the subconscious, and it's still hanging out in the muscle memory in your voice. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. Okay, so I want you to listen in. And if this topic in general is of interest to you, we would love to interview Tracy. I haven't reached out to her specifically about being on the podcast. Although if this is of interest to you, please either send us a DM on Instagram or send us an email, support@becomingzesty.com, so we can make that happen. We want to make sure that this show is the newest, the latest, the greatest, the things you want to hear, and experts when that makes sense. So let us know.
Absolutely. Very excited. The class has been so cool right from the get-go. Yeah, can't wait to have her on.
So today we want to talk about good old parts. And if for those of you who are on Instagram, well, actually, there's a couple of things happening. One thing that happened, I haven't even told you this yet, Alex, is that while working with the voice coach in my session, she told me that my vocal superpower is fun and laughter. So
yes, well, because I knew it was going to be good, because anytime that you start saying something and you're laughing a little too hard to actually say it, I know it's going to be good.
So it's really interesting because I love to laugh and I think I'm funny, although I know that doesn't mean other people do. So I haven't really fully leaned into that. And she said everybody has a vocal superpower. It's usually one thing, like your voice could come across as compassion, or it's completely different for everyone. And she can hear this intuitively. So super cool. So the funny thing about it is that I took this quite literally and have taken it over to Instagram. So for those of you who've been following along, I've now made maybe 3 or 4 reels that are about parts. One of them where I decided to take a shower with my clothes on. It's funny. People do think that one's funny. So go check those out. The funny thing about it, though, is that it isn't just funny. A lot of people reached out and they'll be like, oh, wow, I actually do always question. I'm like, part of me wants to take a shower and part of me really, really doesn't want to get my hair wet or deal with all that or get cold or whatever it is. So this is a real thing that happens that I portrayed in silly ways of like, part of me doesn't know which couch to sit on. The thing is that this actually shows up in every part of our life and in bigger ways.
Yeah.
So bigger ways, such as for me, like part of me wanted to have a successful business and part of me believed you can't do that with kids.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Gosh, no, go for it.
Right, this topic. So we've created a whole masterclass. Maybe 3 or 4 times a year, we're having a free masterclass where you can come learn with us, actually get coaching real time. We're going to have an interactive class, and where our next one is November 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you missed this and it's afterward, we will have a replay. So this one specifically is going to help you understand how the parts of you that are getting in the way of your success. So it's called 3 Proven Hacks to Address Fear in Your Health and Wellness Business. So we are addressing directly to people who want to help other people get healthy. They have a gift, they have a service, they are a provider, and they are maybe getting a little bit stuck in their parts of part of them really believing they can do this, part of them being afraid of putting their voice out there, right? Going back and forth. So we're going to help you discover and integrate those parts that are holding you back from success. So make sure you check out in the link. It's becomingzesty.com/parts to join us, because it's coming up really soon, live November 14th.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes,
So
we're very excited.
We wanted to at least give a little background, because one of our team members was like, oh, well, could I share one of your podcast episodes about parts when I send out an email about this? And then I said, I guess we haven't done that yet, even though it is a very important topic in our world and in our life. So we want to just give a little bit of background about what this even means and how it shows up. Take it away, Dr. Alex, in the brain.
Absolutely. Yes, I was also shocked to discover that we didn't. And I seem to recall even making one. And then I went back and I couldn't find it. So maybe a part of me planned one, and then the other part of me, I don't know what I did with it. So anyways, here we are. And the parts is really, in my opinion, one of the best ways to feel like you're less crazy, and B, get what you want in life. Both things that I think people really want. And what's interesting about looking at parts through the lens of business and entrepreneurship and making an impact out in the world is that everybody universally agrees starting a business is one of the fastest ways to get to self-development, right? And that is because it puts such a spotlight on all of who you are. And since most of us have thousands and thousands of different parts of us, all those parts come tumbling out when we undertake an endeavor like starting a business or just leading out in the world in general. So parts, it is a brain phenomenon, but that is to say that parts can be witnessed in all 4 bodies that we have: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And then it is hardwired as well in the physical brain, like the actual apparatus that we drive around. And that is really to help us stay safe, like survival, and efficiency, which those are the 2 main functions of the brain for us. And so it makes sense that it does that. So what is a part? To create a part of ourselves, we essentially need to have some sort of experience, often very early on, before we consciously remember, sometimes not though, that we have an experience and it begins to have an interpretation created by us. And so we say, okay, here's what happened, here's what it means. And we store that in our brains and in our minds. Then as we go along, there are often other experiences that are different or opposite of that, and they have their own event and then their own interpretation. As we go then, oftentimes on any given topic, let's say love, right? That sometimes we are experiencing love, and we might have an event that with our grandma that said, people who are close to me love me and make me feel good. And then you might have an event with love where everybody came to your 8th birthday party and got you the thing that you really, really wanted. It was very exciting, and then the love from your first boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, right? And so all of those things that are positive to love and feel like love and are associated with love, and that state is then stored in one area. And then with the opposite of love, like love and its negative manifestations, there might be like, I got yelled at by my mom, I got dumped by my first boyfriend, whatever, you start putting all that in one spot. So why then are parts created? Well, in order to be in the mindset of love and liking what's happening, being positive and feeling good about it, we essentially begin to access that part of our brain that already has efficiently wired those concepts together. And so as we feel or experience something that then activates that part of our brain, we will go, oh yeah, I'm in a loving space, and you kind of act from love and it feels fine. But then sometimes some aspects of a situation will also have the corollary. For example, when, let's say, you went through a horrific breakup and then you start dating again, right? It's like, I want love, I love love, and this other part is getting activated that says, ooh, love hurts, that is the worst pain I've ever felt, and please don't do that again, right? For them to each part of us that is then stored there, for them to have a quote accurate picture of what their interpretation is, it has to exclude the other one, right? For you to believe in your heart that love is the greatest force in the universe, you have to, like, what normal people, or what usually happens, and normal as in statistically very, very common, is we exclude in that moment the awareness of those other aspects, the nuances, and we feel great. And then sometimes someone does something then, and you flip and you go, oh, well, if that's who you are, then I'm going to push you away. That's not safe, right? And all of a sudden you start getting reactionary, pushing them away to go over there and to feel kind of cozy and confident with those concepts being true. Often we have to exclude all the other things that says, well, but love is safe and love is a good thing. And right, for us to react and push someone away, those things will just muddle the picture and make it more confusing. So in the brain, to create parts for efficiency, for survival, the set mechanism is to put boundaries and walls around each individual part, so that we can efficiently function from that part, see things from that lens, and take action in an expeditious or a somewhat expeditious manner, right? That is fine. But as you can hear, that setup begins to create walls within ourselves. And then actually that within ourselves translates to the physical brain itself. And so because of that, while it is an okay process to start with, essentially the lack of acknowledgement on parts and not having a system to get them to take their walls down and negotiate What am I, as an empowered adult, going to think about blank? What do I think about love? Right. And then at that point, you are negotiating, because then it has to make sense of all the parts' contributions, right? The part that says, oh, but love hurts sometimes. The concept of love has to integrate that in to have it still be true, to also include the fact that love is awesome and I want to seek it, right? Love means connection, love means joy, love means fun, love means whatever. So that negotiation is what creates the integration. From that space, then we have a lot of different ways to choose our actions from a place of identity. What do we want to do? And what are we at the end of the day proud to go to bed at night saying, that's the decision I made and I'm okay with that? And so that is that process of first being aware of the parts, giving them a voice because they're all valid, and then negotiating from a place of empowered adulthood. As we talked about, a lot of these parts start so early that as people experience giving them freedom to speak, what often happens is that the way they sound does sound like the age where they kind of got arrested in their development. And I love the show Arrested Development, so I got to plug it with the statement. But then that's where sometimes you're talking to someone and you say something and they get triggered and a whole nother person seems to come out, or maybe this is you, right? You're like patient mom mode and then and hard left, and that part comes out, and all of a sudden the language is different, maybe like the tone is different, the sentence structure, and it might be very short sentences, right? Like the sit down, shut up, that that like a 4-year-old could say. Whereas to include a complex concept around motherhood and to deliver and include the concept of motherhood that acknowledges, yeah, most of the time I'm patient, sometimes I'm not, and how do I see that and how do I make sense of that? That's that process of getting freedom to the little kid part so that they don't need to get stuck there, right? We don't enjoy delivering that part when we consciously are listening to ourselves going, I know I'm tweaking out. Like, I know I'm saying things that I probably shouldn't be saying or need to consider more or whatever. And you just kind of snap or have a knee-jerk reaction, that kind of stuff. Those aspects, then I think those parts make people feel like they're crazy. They're like, I say that I want one thing and then I do another thing, kind of like Megan jokes about the snapping at her kids while reading the Present Parent Conscious Parenting book, right? Which I love that story. It's amazing for so many reasons, but that is the kind of thing we get into blame about. We get into like self-blame, we go into shame, we go into guilt, and to struggle habitually with those things is hard and it hurts and it is a very painful process. And so having a way to see yourself clearly and to go, oh, I understand that these parts can get created, and I understand that are resources to bring them together and act from a place of me. None of those other things are necessary, right? You saw the blame, the shame, and the guilt. You use them appropriately as an emotional compass. You decided to do something about it, like come to the masterclass, do the framework, and actually apply it. And then you feel better. You don't need those anymore, right? And people are like, how do I get over guilt, get over shame, all that stuff? A lot of times it's just treating yourself well. That's really what it looks like.
And what we are helping people tease out is whether it's part of the time or all of the time, right? So you'll hear it in your language or people you're talking to. It's so fun once you think of this and hear it, because they'll actually say, well, part of me really wants to Part of me really wants to do the podcast. And part of me is super afraid of the visibility or whatever it is that's coming up. Because sometimes it is really just really that we are in parts about it. And sometimes it's a belief that's just all the time. The belief all the time might just be like, I suck at speaking. I don't know what it is. That there might be something all the time. So with the language, we can start to tease out which area are we in and what is going on with that. I just had a recent coaching call, Alex, you'll love this. And the person was saying to me, well, it was about habits, and they were saying, well, I'm really good at doing a certain habit that revolved kind of around it was restrictive. It was a juice type cleanse that she was doing one day a month. And she said, I don't get it. I'm really good at doing it. I do it every single month. I've been doing it for like 5 years, every single month, that one day. And then maybe 3 or 4 days later, would go right back to full on binging of the potato chips and whatever. And so obviously y'all have been around here long enough. Like we're not making any arguments or conversations around the idea of it, but the concept, right, of being able to do something all in and then not at all. And she said, I don't get it. Like, why, how can I be so good at this habit and then not? And I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, is this a parts thing or is this a belief? And the more I asked questions, it came down to really, it was not part of the time. It was all of the time. It was all or nothing all of the time. So it looked like it wasn't, because the all versus the nothing part she wasn't enjoying. But really it was, in that version was, doing the thing she wanted to the whole day. And then the other time it was doing the exact opposite. It was doing the thing she didn't want to all day. Right. So it became just as much of a habit. Like it was the same habit in the other direction. So we get to start to see like, okay, is this all of the time? Is this part of the time? And instead of going all or nothing, we can go to the phrase I heard recently is, how about small and something?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's so true, because there's so many variations of this, but it all ends in a similar thing of like, sometimes people plan for a long time and never start. Sometimes people start but fall off. Sometimes people are just yo-yoing up and down, up and down, up and down. Sometimes people go almost all the way there and then peter out at the end. Sometimes they go through a set time, and then once the time done, they're like, oh, good, I can relax, and they go down. There's lots of different ways to kind of express the issues, but really at the heart of it, it's more like, do you act like how you want? Right. And if there's any discrepancy, which if you're a human, I'm gonna call it that there is, then and if not, let's chat, email us, then then this is relevant, because essentially every time you feel yourself going like, well, part of me wants to stop scrolling, and then your finger keeps scrolling, right? Then, or you're like, part of me wants to get mad at my partner about this thing, and a part of me knows it's not that big of a deal, and I'm just frustrated today, right? There's all these expressions of it. And the thing that I find the most powerful in some ways about parts, besides just the awareness of that they exist, because that alone was, for me, I don't use life-changing very loosely, because a lot of things aren't. But on that one, I actually would say it was life-changing to even acknowledge parts. And then 2 is that the whole point in parts is that if they're around, there is a function to them. Those walls are giving context and meaning to something. And then again, this goes back to part 1 of why I think this works so well, is that it makes you feel less crazy when you know that you don't just sabotage yourself because you are like weird or messed up, or like fighting against yourself, or whatever it is that makes it feel like more of a fight rather than a collaboration. But rather to say, if this part is here, it must be here for a reason. And if that is true, then from an empowered adult decision, I can take ownership of how I express it. And so we'll go into how that actually happens and how that works in the mastermind, but think about that power, right? Think about being willing to acknowledge why you do something and to gift it to yourself and to bring its presence into your life in a different way that you do like, is then the thing that people go, oh, well, I wasn't messed up for that. I just wanted this. And now that I can choose, this, and this also, well, I can just choose one of those. There's really nothing all that difficult or complicated or many steps about it. Right. And so now I think with the masterclass, we just do it because if this podcast, just to say that, was going to work for the majority of people, then that's what we would just be doing, a podcast. But at the end of the day, a lot of times what the hangup is not because the concept is hard or that the steps are complicated. It's that because we have habitually had so much time in our life previously where we've divorced ourselves from ourselves in some way, right? All this fragmentation, lack of trust, lack of belief in ourselves, to speaking negatively to ourselves, all those things are still present. So when we begin this process, at first it's kind of like just unpacking a closet that's been a little overstuffed. At first you're like, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff, right? It starts looking a little more like, whoa, okay, cool, all this stuff is out there. And in my opinion, that's where sometimes it can feel a little rocky unless someone is shining the light and explaining to you exactly how to do it, right? It can be a little discombobulating to bring up self-awareness. And so because we know that, this is a process that does really well with a rinse and repeat. Like, clarity is really, really key here. Of course, any one of us can begin to resource ourselves. So, but in no way am I saying someone can't do it. But with this, to bring up self-awareness and then not see it through, the limitation that can sometimes comes up that becomes, I'm even better at making myself feel guilty. I'm even better about pointing out where I suck, but I haven't actually seen myself through to have that negotiation come together and feel happy with it. So that's the part that we all need you to do, right? That's the part that gets you results. And so, that's why it works like that. But in and of itself, negotiating between parts is as simple as talking.
And the most painful part about parts is when we're sitting on the fence. It's like when
So
we're
true.
literally one leg's pulling one way, one leg's pulling the other. That's uncomfortable.
It's super uncomfortable. And then especially without a lack of awareness in parts, I think the reason that I say parts were life-changing for me, because it changed the conversations that I was having drastically. Before, I would always go into conversations if I was conflicted on the inside. I had a really hard time because I may have like, well, something happened that hurt me, but I can see it also from that person's perspective, and you're kind of hemming and hawing, and I didn't know what to say. So it's like, am I mad at them? Am I not mad at them? Do I need them to do something? Do I not need them to do something? And I would literally, with the way that my brain and my mind is geared and like the way that it expresses itself, oh my God, it could just eat itself on that. And so when I realized like, oh, if I have parts, I can explain to someone that I am in parts. This is here and this is here. So then when they're over there, if they're explaining the situation from their point of view, and I've already acknowledged that, yes, I know that you are tired tonight and that brown banana face you're giving me is not personal, but I'm taking it personally. They don't need to sit there and go, well, let me explain why I'm defensive about the brown banana face. It's because I had a long work day. I already said it. right? They're not feeling like they have to argue with me. They don't have to get defensive. Now they can explain themselves like from their perspective again, but it's not an argument because I already said it. I already acknowledged it. I'm already saying like a part of me acknowledges that I'm tripping out on this. And when that had happened, all those conversations, it was so much easier. And I think for me knowingly doing it, it was a lot easier. And for me, for the other person, even if it was not someone that was like trained in parts or that I could say parts to, then it felt easier for them too. It just felt like it turned anything that could have been an argument or heated or blamey into just a regular old conversation. And as at the time, recovering people pleaser and general repression queen, was was a huge weight off. I mean, really, it made me feel so much better about everything. Because I just would freak out at conversations, and I got to actually have them. And then over time, I got to have a lot more ahas about vulnerability and authenticity and saying the truth and just being yourself and all of those things that got to come after. They all came after the experience of parts.
I think you're highlighting such an important piece with the labeling, like labeling it, naming it, explaining it, and which is what the parts do get to do. And when everyone at the masterclass will get to experience that. And I know, so now ever since I really was grasping parts and how that impacted me, I could label it differently. So I'm about to go do something that's a little bit outside my comfort zone. I'm about to ask somebody if I can be on their podcast or do something, right? And that, like, that sleepy Megan part would come in. Like, I don't know.
They're so good.
Should I take a nap instead? You know? And the pattern was the pattern. It happened enough of a time that I was very aware this was a pattern. Just being able to label that, be like, hey, I see you, sleepy part. I see you trying to stop me from this thing that you think is scary, and I get it. Has shifted, and sometimes that alone is like, oh, I'm not actually sleepy. Right.
Right. Especially if
myself.
yeah. And if that part really is sleepy, then after you send the email or the DM or whatever it is, then you still feel tired, you can take a nap, right? No part of this, the beautiful part of this to me is the absolute lack of inner gaslighting that can happen here. It's like if you're legitimately tired and you think it's a part and you're talking to it, then that when you're talking to somebody, doesn't the conversation generally unfold? I mean, yes, there are conversations that don't get anywhere and you're like, what is happening here? But they are few and far between if you compare it to all the conversations that you have. So really it's the same thing where if your parts are speaking and they got valid points, then even after you have the negotiation and they still have something that they need, well, then they'll let you know and then you can do it, right? So it's a beautiful aspect of really like working with yourself to accomplish what it is you want while still taking care of yourself, right? If you are tired and you actually just flat out refuse to nap, and that is something that needs to happen, well, then that part, something will alert you to that fact. And what's interesting is that sometimes the parts are rather relatively large and they create significant issues. So sometimes a sick part is a part that is very protective, right? When we feel sick, then we don't force ourselves to do stuff as much. And if that's been your main strategy, is just brute force towards yourself and beating yourself up and shaming yourself and all of that, then health crash, it's a beautiful way to get out of it. And it is very effective and everybody will agree with you. So it's like sometimes people are literally like their one thing is that they want to heal, right? And so this is not just, oh, life feels harder when we don't take care of our parts. No, literally everything that you are having a problem with is related to parts in some way. And because they communicate with each other, because they are dynamic, if you start with any part of your life, any context of life, it will have a ripple effect of some kind. And we will teach in the class exactly how to make that ripple effect as big as possible. I do love that we're doing the class the way that we're doing it, because it highlights the fact that negotiating within yourself is something that can happen by yourself. And traditionally, parts have been taught in a format and have been explained in ways that require somebody with you. And one of the things that we want to bring into the world is options for ourselves. And so anytime that we can do that, we are wanting to. That's part of the ZESTY shtick. It's part of our brand identity. And this is it ends up being really, really exciting, because traditionally it has really required something much more like high powered. And I'm super excited, and I feel very proud, and I know you do too, Maggie, of the fact that we can bring this to people in a completely different way, something that has never really existed. Well, it actually just has never existed. Let me say it. So really, really exciting. And when we can do things alone, that means that we can teach more people. The ripple effect can happen faster. And boy, anytime we get into a ripple effect can happen faster scenario, that's for us like such an important key, right? All our stuff's transformation accelerator, because you deserve to have your stuff kind of around when you want it, not a whole lot of time after. I know that's when I want my stuff, so we're going to go ahead and assume that's when you want yours too.
When would now be the right time to have that stuff?
I know, right? People are always like, oh, you should cultivate patience. I'm like, or you could have the thing, but whatever, that's why we have our own podcast, so I can actually say that stuff. And anybody that is on board with that idea, come on by. And obviously, if you know somebody, send them over.
Beautiful. Well, anything else to share today, Alex? I feel integrated.
I love it. A part of me feels like I could go on forever, but that's okay. Well, maybe we'll do part 2, and like just keep it moving, because the parts discussion, I have a feeling, might be never ending.
Well, that's true. I actually bought a costume. Okay. Specifically for a parts reel I'm going to make later. So there's definitely more coming.
Oh, good.
This is my first actual purchase of gear just for a video.
I love it.
The Instagram. So.
Oh, very nice. Check it out. We'll put our stuff in the show notes.
All right. Thank you all for being here. So if you can come join us live November 14th, 7 p.m. Eastern for the free masterclass, we would love, love, love to have you. If you cannot be live, just still put your name on the list. We will send out the replay and any goodies that come with that. And we're going to do a giveaway. Actually, we're going to do a giveaway for people who are there live. So, if you've been around a while, you'll start to learn that when you come live, you may win stuff. You may win money. You may win a ticket to something. I don't know. Someone got a Muse headband for a couple $100 worth of investment for free at our last event. You never know. So join us live. We'll be giving away the good stuff. And we will see you there or on the podcast or wherever we see you.
All right. Have a good one. Stay zesty.
Thanks for coming to hang out with us on the podcast. It is our goal to lead others through accelerated transformation that takes all parts of ourselves into account. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. At almost 2 million downloads and quickly heading to 3, we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more and more people and help them learn how all 4 bodies, physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, work so they feel empowered to be, do, and have whatever they want in life.
If you find this podcast helpful, please take a moment to text 5 friends you think might benefit and leave us a review. It means so much to share this work that has transformed our lives with others. We appreciate your help so much and can't wait to see you next time.